Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 20th episode of the iDebate server. I'm the moderator for tonight's debate, Resident Evie, and my angel is in the centerfold. The topic will be, should we defund the police? Arguing in the affirmative is the atheist activist and social democrat religion is bullshit. Arguing in the negative is Kirbside, a student in criminal justice and law enforcement supporter. Each debater will be given a 5-minute opening argument. After each debater has given their opening, they will have 10 minutes to rebut their opponent. After the rebuttals, there will be a 20-minute open dialogue, asking each other questions with as minimal interruptions as possible. After the dialogue, they will both offer a 5-minute closing, and this will conclude the debate, at which point we will allow audience members to connect and ask questions to the debaters. The debaters will only answer questions they are directly asked, so if you wish to hear from both people, make sure to address them both. The Q&A will last 30 minutes. After this 30 minutes has expired, the recording will stop, so any further discussion between the debaters or the audience will not be included in the YouTube upload. The rules are quite simple. The debaters will not be allowed to go over time during the opening, or they will be muted. The rebuttal, however, will be given 15 to 20 seconds of overlap, since the debaters will likely be creating it as they go along. The opening dialogue will be as free as possible, and while debaters are restricted from directly insulting each other at any point in the exchange, profanity will not be censored as long as it's not used gratuitously. If the conversation becomes incoherent, I, the moderator, will intervene to bring the point back at hand. The closing will also last for no longer than 5 minutes, or the debater will be muted. During each phase of the debate, I will let the debaters know when they have 1 minute left, 30 seconds left, 10 seconds left, and if they're still talking after their time expires, they will be muted and we will be moving on to the next phase. The audience is allowed to utilize the debate text chat to fact-check the debaters and deliberate the topic among themselves. However, you will not be allowed to connect to the queue until the Q&A, at which point a queue will be initiated for you to join if you wish to ask the debaters a question. If both debaters both agree and understand the rules, we'll go ahead and begin. Rib, since you're arguing in the affirmative of the motion this evening, you'll be giving your opening argument first. You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming tonight. Defund the police. We should really kind of start by kind of defining what that is. So yes, it is the kind of word for word meaning. We are advocating for defunding the police, but that's just one portion of it. We're really talking about reforming the police as well as redistributing their funds back into the communities that they serve. A healthy percent of states' budgets go to the police. $115 billion in 2017, according to Urban Institute. I can link that if you are interested. Can be anywhere from, so defund could be anywhere from them spending 110 versus 115 to 30 versus 115. The way that line can be, we can talk about, but that's for a different day. That's not the topic tonight. Regardless of where the line of defund should be, we're not talking about abolishing the police. That is arguably the right-leaning, most devious and most batshit ludicrous fucking insane smear yet. Trump released an ad on this lines where he attacked Biden, showing an old woman home alone, and she calls the police, and there's no answer at the police because they have been abolished. It's absolute lunacy. Biden crafted the crime bill. Now, I know that I've gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I felt it was relevant. The types of reform that we are talking about end broken windows policing, instituting some form of a community oversight, limit the use of force, independently investigate and prosecute any claims of misconduct based on the police, a community representation, body cams on all police and cannot be turned off under the penalty of law, redo training towards de-escalation, end for-profit policing, demilitarize the police, fair police union contracts, and last but by absolutely no means least, end the fucking drug war. All of these will go such a long way into reforming the police while taking away from their budgets to redirect that money back into the communities. Just for example, after-school programs, youth clubs, etc. These will mean that less teenagers are on the streets after schools before their parents come home, and by definition, are away from the streets, therefore away from the possibility of committing crime. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That is the end of my opening.
Thank you. And you can start.
Okay, I assume she said I can start whenever I'm ready. She had a little robot mode.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'll go ahead and begin. So since the Stone Ages, basic moral rights were enforced by special appointed officials to bring justice for robberies, murders, and other things that were considered morally wrong. They had to do this because people who did these things had no moral regard for the community. Basically, the silent treatment wasn't working. Sir Robert Peel, who crafted the current form of modern policing, called the Bobbies in London 1829, and eventually the New York Police Department in 1845 were the largest cities at the time and needed to enforce basic human rights. Fast forward to 2020, the New York City's budget is only opposed, the New York City crime is only opposed by the New York Police Department. And in the middle of riots and protesting, Mayor Bill de Blasio dropped the funding of the NYPD. And as a result, homicides have gone up to 166 victims as of late June, which is much greater than the 124 total for the entire year of 2019. 24 people alone were shot on June 5th. If we abolish the police or even defund the police anywhere near as much as New York did, we'll be living less civilized than we were in the Stone Ages. I will concede the rest of my time.
All right, thank you. And we're going to add the rest of that time to your open discussion. So now we're going to move to rebuttals. And Rib, you get the first rebuttal.
Okay, so I did say it in my opening. I'm rather saddened to have heard it there in yours. We're not talking about abolishing. Nobody is talking about abolishing the police. If you say that we are, you are literally making stuff up. Nobody is talking about abolishing the police. That's it. Anyway, I mean, to kind of bring up to one of your other points, I mean, of course, police are the only ones officially policing. I don't really think that anybody said any differently. We're just talking about the types of policing. So everybody knows, and like this kind of sparked or at least hit mainstream audience or a worldwide audience after the death of George Floyd. Now, it's not necessarily what we're talking about, although just to kind of explain where me and my side are coming from. We are talking about defunding the police and about retraining and about reforming the current police. It is not good enough to simply say, well, look, I get it. I get we should get rid of the bad cops, right? Everybody agrees we should get rid of the bad cops. But if you get rid of the bad cops and replace them with good cops, if you put them into a bad and a broken system, then they are eventually going to become desensitized, if not bad themselves. I'm sure for the officer who murdered George Floyd, I'm sure the 3 or 4 other police that were surrounding him, watching him murder somebody in real time, I'm sure that when they entered the academy, they were good and decent people. I'm sure they were. But through the broken, rotting, crumbling system, they were desensitized to the types of abuses that the police have normalized. And by that happening, they didn't intervene. They didn't say, hey, dude, you're kneeling on his fucking neck. You should probably stop doing that. They didn't do that. They allowed it. They didn't try to stop him. They didn't do anything. They allowed it to happen. The point here is, if you simply replace the bad cops, if even the possibility for the good cops that are replacing them, if the possibility for them to go bad is there, then the system is not working, clearly and evidently. I don't know where the rest of this is going to go because, as I said, we're not talking about abolishing, and then that was brought up. But look, at that, I'm going to leave it over to you.
All right. And Kirbside, your rebuttal can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. So the reason I mentioned abolish in my opening statement is because there were three different ways to go about talking about defunding the police. Some people want to push to just defund them. Some people want to defund them and form new and other forms of law enforcement, and other people want to abolish them completely. So I was just covering my bases there. My apologies for if that went off topic on your end. But we're in rebuttals right now. I want to mention something. You said you want to increase the training for police officers, but you also want to defund them. You can't just take money away from people and expect them to get better. That's like telling teachers or taking away money from teachers and telling them do better jobs. It just doesn't work like that. You said you want to redirect the budgets into other things. I assume you mean like housing and urban development, things like that, or really it could mean anything. It depends. My response would depend on what you're looking to invest it in. If you're looking to invest it in other public safety forms, I would stand behind that. If you're looking to take that money away and put it into housing, that's not really going to do much to protect the public. Let's see here. You said the system is broken, and you talked about three other cops who stood around Floyd. I agree. Those cops should not be cops. Those cops were not trained properly. Those cops did not understand that they should have intervened. And because of that, George Floyd lost his life. Rest in peace. But that does not mean the whole system is bad. I'm not exactly sure how you can say the whole system is bad just because of a few bad officers. I agree. They're not. No one's perfect. No one. That's humanly impossible. I would stand next to you to get rid of the racist cops. I would stand next to you to get rid of the cops that don't know what they're doing and the cops that don't know how to do their job, or get rid of the trainers that don't know how to train people. But that doesn't mean the whole system is corrupt and that we should defund the entire system. I want to, let's see here. You said, yeah, they do. Of course, police need better training. I'll stand next to you on that. But again, you can't just say, oh, you need better training, and then take away their money for that training. You'd need to give them more money for better instructors, better facilities, better equipment, better training material, even more equipment and more training materials. You can't just, it's like saying, I'll use the same example again. If you have a teacher and they're not doing a good job, you take money away from that teacher's paycheck and say, do better. That's not going to work. Because that money, she's not going to be able to use that money to benefit her and her. It's just going to be a discouragement, pretty much. So I'm not sure if I can yield my time. I would love to. I don't really have much else to respond to.
Yeah, absolutely you can. Alrighty. And with that, we're going to move into the open discussion. You guys have a good bit of time left, so you've got about 37 minutes for it, and y'all can start now.
All right. Okay. So you had kind of said a few things there. You had said that if you redirect the money back into housing, that it doesn't really protect it. Well, it kind of protects them from homelessness. So that's kind of one of the things that it protects them from. Flu would be another one, because if you're outside and it's raining. We're not talking about taking it away from the individual police officers. Like, you do kind of realize that. So we're talking about defunding the police as an organization. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about the individual officers' wages. You do know that, right?
That's not necessarily true. I mean, if you have a small department that's not making a lot of money, the officer's pay is going to be a lot less than it would be for a city size, the size of New York.
Well, that police officers get paid by the taxpayer, and that it's the police department that's the one that gets the state dollars, right?
Right, and if you take those state dollars away, then they're not going to have
It only affects
the officers.
No, it only affects the department. You're not listening to me. The officers get paid by you. You, through your tax dollars, pays the police officers' salaries.
Mm-hmm. It also
If we
pays
take
for
away,
their guns, it
the
pays for
money
their
that the
equipment, it
state,
pays for their cars.
what?
Sorry
Sorry.
to cut you off. I said it pays for their equipment, it pays for their guns, it pays for their ammo, it pays for their training. Sorry to cut you off, but that's it doesn't just pay their salary.
No, but okay. The money that the states gives goes directly to the department itself. So that would go to things like probably guns, ammo, cars, but you don't need to upgrade your car every year. You don't need to get a brand new police car every single year. There are cars that are like you can have a 5, 8 year old car that is is more than capable of getting you from A to B with no complications or no issues. So you don't need to get a new car every year, but that's a smaller point. We're not talking about cutting the individual police officers' wages. That's I just want to get that out there.
Then what are you gonna get rid of? Because the department needs money for all these things, such as guns. And like you said the cars. They don't. Of course, they don't need to buy new cars every single year, but they need to keep them running, right? They need to keep. If something breaks, they need to be able to replace that as soon as possible, so that officer can get back out on the streets.
That's true. But if we take some of the money that is going towards the individual police departments and redirect it back to training on how to de-escalate, they're probably not going to need that has a direct correlation on the amount of guns and the amount of ammo that the officer will be using at any given time. So, kind of, I'm not necessarily going to say like cancels each other out monetary wise, but I'm just saying like.
Okay, well let me respond to those two things. I'm not good at multitasking. Could you repeat what you said, and I'll make a rebuttal. Just the 2 points you made. I'll make a rebuttal on both of them.
So if we redirect the funds towards training for how to de-escalate, then it's going to have a correlation to do with the amount of guns and the amount of ammo that a police officer will use in any given year. It's not going to directly like cancel each other out monetary wise, but like
okay,
it's going to have a positive impact basically.
Okay, thank you for repeating. I'm sorry, I don't have the biggest.
No problem, dude. Take your time. You're all right.
So to start with, you said redirecting funds toward training. That money would still go to the department because each department has their own training facilities. It's not, or yeah, each department has their own training facilities. It's not. Oh well, let's take the money away from one building and put it into the. It's just all one department. The department, the chief or the sheriff or whoever is in charge of each department, they have control of how much the officers make, how much money goes to what department. They have advisors, of course, but that's the chief or the chief for police, sheriff for the sheriff's departments, and commissioner for state and highway patrol. Those guys have control of where the money goes. It's not the government saying, oh well. It's not the government saying 20% here, 40% here. The chief, the commissioner, and the sheriff, they make those decisions. Also, you said guns and ammo. They use a lot of they use a lot of ammo every year. Most of that ammo is spent in training, not on the streets. I just want to throw this statistic out there. Only 27% of police officers have ever fired their service weapon while on duty, and 98.3% of those times the suspects were armed. So I assume you're referring to training ammunition and not just on the street ammunition.
Well, it would be referring to both at the risk of being accused of being a broken record. If we redirect the funds back to de-escalation, then even in training, you don't need to use your gun. Only in extreme cases. I don't really like this, and I'm like not necessarily saying that like you were kind of going there or that you were saying this, but this whole line of like it used to be, right? It used to be that police officers, when they were signing up to do the job of being a police officer, knew what the job entailed. They knew that going into it on a day-to-day basis, there was a chance that they were going to be injured, if not lose their life, right? They knew that. They still know that. But it became somewhere, and I'm not 100% sure where, but somewhere along the line, it became acceptable in the eyes of the mainstream public for people to say, well, no, of course he had to shoot him because he feared for his life. Like, well, no, that's literally what you signed up for, dude. I'm sorry. I know it sounds cold. I know that sounds harsh. But that's kind of like a soldier going into Iraq and saying, "Well, oh, I didn't know we were going to be getting shot at." Yes, you did. I'm sorry, you did. That you knew that was a possibility. So, like, this
So
whole thing
you would.
about,
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
but like the whole point is, if you train them on how to de-escalate, then they don't need to use their guns as often. So whether it be in training and whether it be on the streets, the point is they're going to be using less.
Okay, so going back to the thing about you said it's what they signed up for. Yeah, it's what they signed up for. They signed up for the risk that they could possibly die. Same with soldiers. But I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want a soldier just accepting getting shot by 3, 4 Taliban soldiers, or whoever they're fighting, because that's what he signed up for. I'd rather that soldier fight for his life and make sure that he goes home or goes to base at least the next day so we can continue to fight. I don't know about you. That's just me. Now, I will say that police absolutely need some better de-escalation training. But if we defund them, how are they going to get that training?
Well, okay, so you know that okay. When we say defund, we're talking about taking money away from individual things, not like everything as a whole. So it's not as if like everything that a department spends money on, like every single thing is going to be cut by like 5%, right? We're talking about some things being cut by 2%, something I can't English. Some things being cut by 10%, etc., etc. Like so, like
Mm-hmm.
we're not
Yeah,
talking about not training them. We're talking about training them differently
right.
on how to
And
de-escalate a situation. I don't know if you saw the video. There was a video. It went semi-viral a few months ago. It was of four police officers in England. Four of them surrounding a guy who had a machete. Now, in case you haven't been able to tell by the accent, I am Irish, and in Ireland and in England, our police officers don't have guns; they have sticks. So, in a situation like that where a guy has a machete, you kind of need to know how to de-escalate that situation. And if you watch the video, they did de-escalate the situation, and he survived. The guy wielding the machete survived. I If I was a betting man, I would probably bet my house that if that situation happened in the States, he would have been dead on arrival of the police.
right,
So
and that's why
the
I agree
point
with
is what I'm saying is get rid of that and train them on how to de-escalate.
Right. That's why I agree with you on de-escalation tactics. We need more de-escalation tactics. But as I said, and as you coined the term, sounding like a broken record, you can't defund them and then get rid of their, and then expect them to perform better. Now, you also said you want to defund, or you want to. You said it. What was the exact term you used? You said that it's not going to be a 5% cut on every single thing. You're
Mm.
right. So the chief, the commissioner, and the sheriffs, or anyone else in charge of a department of law enforcement, they're not going to sit here and say, "Oh well, let's cut out the most important things or the things that the public doesn't agree with." No, they're going to sit here and they're going to cut out things that are the least important. Police salaries is one, training is one, and then vehicles is going to be another one, and then eventually it'll start working its way towards weapons and uniforms, and then you go downhill from there.
Um, I didn't. Oh, okay. Um, okay. So there was a few things that you said there. I had gave a pretty lengthy list in my opening about the types of things that we are talking about. So it's not going to be the police commissioner or the sheriff or whatever word you want to use. It's not going to be them deciding. It's going to be like proper and specific pieces of legislation that is going to be deciding what changes and what doesn't. So
Why?
I mean, like in the list of the things that I gave, and I can read off one or two of them if you want me to. Is there anything on that that you disagreed with or that you took issue with?
Well, before I say anything that I took issue with, I want to say you said you want the government or legislation, as you the term you use, to decide where the money goes in the police departments. Why would you want someone who has no experience in law enforcement to tell law enforcement where they put their money?
Um, the same way that I wouldn't trust somebody who doesn't know how to de-escalate a situation going in to assist people.
Right. And I think everyone agrees, including police chiefs. I've seen many police chiefs and commissioners and sheriffs. I'm just going to use the word chiefs to classify them all from now on. I've seen
Mhm.
plenty of police chiefs that agree that they need better de-escalation tactics. But as I said, you can't just defund them. You can't take away money from them. And expect them to do and perform better, and expect them to train better on de-escalation. You're going to need more money. In fact, you're going to need even more money than they currently have to train them better on de-escalation, as they're going to need de-escalation specialists, therapists, and other forms of trainers to come in and inform these officers on how to better de-escalate situations.
Well, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that I am. That's not an egotistical statement. It's just I know a U.S. policeman. They pay for their own like initial training for like to get their qualification as being a police officer, right? So if you pay for it, then it's not the police department that's not getting paid for the initial training, but you're just paying like more or extra or something. But at the end of the day, you're getting a better quality, um, you know, work environment.
Not sure what police officer you're talking to, because in my area, at the multiple police departments I looked at when I was attempting to become a law enforcement officer early, they told me that I would be paid. I don't have to pay. I would be paid to be a law enforcement officer. They would give me a salary, and I would go into the training, and I would be trained on their dollar, and they would pay me while I do that. And then once I complete the training, excuse me, the training, then I get paid even more.
Okay, well, I kind of think this is kind of going down into like a little bit of a rabbit hole on like whether or not police officers pay for their own training or not. Um, you had said that like before you kind of point out the things in my list that you had issues with. So like, is there any or
I like I said, I have a small brain. Can you refresh me on a few?
Okay, so yeah, so I'll kind of talk about a few of them that kind of seem to you know cause a stir, shall we say.
Mhm.
Body cams on all police and cannot turn them off under penalty of law. Um, we do training, although we've just kind of talked about that. Fair police union contrasts and end the drug war.
Okay,
Those would
let's
probably
start.
be the top three that are the most hot.
Let's start with the body cams.
Hmm.
I agree. Police should absolutely have body cams on at all time and have them on. There are a couple issues with body cams. One, you're going to need money, so defunding them isn't just going to automatically, bam, let's defund these guys so they buy more stuff. Two, body cams, they don't have a long battery life. I have been in many situations where where the officer was communicating with me and his body camera was off, not because he shut it off. You could see the little on switch was on. It's just the battery ran out. The battery life, I'm not gonna make a guess, but I am gonna make an estimate. I'd say it's probably about 10 hours, 12 hours max. Um, Even then, body cams, not every officer has their own personal body cam. It's some departments, like small departments, they have to reuse body cams. Some departments don't even have all body cams for their officers. So I absolutely agree. We need body cams for all officers and have them on at all times. Only issue is there's just not enough money for these departments to get them that.
Yeah, but okay. It's still you're still talking about defunding the police as if it's a blanket bomb on everything. It's not, and I think that until we can come to some form of an agreement on that, we're going to be talking past each other. We're not talking about defunding every single aspect of the police. We're talking about defunding specific ones.
Right. So when you say that, you're forgetting the fact that police we're taking the amount of money police already have right now, which is not enough to get body cams for all officers, and you want to take total away from them and have legislators tell those police officers where to put the money. So that money isn't just going to magically appear for those officers. Those officers or the departments, those departments are then going to have to decide, or someone, as you suggested, legislation, people who have no experience in whatsoever are going to decide where that money goes, who gets what money, and why.
Well, I mean, yeah. So, like, one of the things. So, if this was made into legislation that they have to wear body cams under penalty of law, do you really not think that they're going to come up with some sort of a workaround? That if they make it a penalty of law that you cannot turn off your body cam, or that it has to be on at all times whilst you are on active duty, that they're like not going to come up with some sort of a thing, so it's not like, oh no, I didn't turn it off, it just ran out of battery. Do you really think they're not going to come up with some sort of a workaround for that?
I think they will, but in order to do that, they need money. And I sound like a broke. I swear to God, if there was a definition for broken record, it would be Kirbside83. Um, the you, and I thought about that, and I forgot what I was gonna say. Um, the bot that yes, they would absolutely come up with a workaround for it. They would definitely figure out how to get more money for body cams and longer batteries for those body cams. But in order to do that, if you don't give them any more money, they're just going to have to take something away from something else. So, what was the least priority thing? What was it? Cars or bullets or uniforms, something like that. Pretty important stuff.
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. We, I think, kind of acknowledged that we're both in favor of retraining, in favor of de-escalation.
Yeah.
That is, of course, going to cost extra money, right? That money's got to come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, given the defund the police movement also incorporates, you know, the reformation of the police. One of those things includes the extra training. And so we're talking about defunding them, but we're also talking about giving them more money to do specific things. So if we're in agreement on that and you can see how they are going to do that, I'm failing to understand why you can't see why they're able to do that for body cams if this is made into law.
So what you just said is that you want, or is that many people want to defund the police and then give them money for better training. So wouldn't that mean that they're not defunding them
It's defunding them in certain aspects
in
and in
certain
certain
aspects?
areas. Yes.
Okay. And who decides where the money goes again in police department?
Right now, I would presume it's up to the states.
No, I explained this before. It's the chiefs, sheriffs, and commissioners that decide where money goes in each department.
Right. Well, that's a problem
Why?
because they have an inherent bias as to where it's going to go.
Because they're the most knowledgeable person in the county for that position, or in that district or area or whatever it is. If they're the
Yeah,
chief, if
they
they're the
would
chief,
be
they
in
have at least
certain.
20 years experience. If they're the chief, they probably have the most experience. If they're the chief, that means they're the most knowledgeable, not only at running people, but managing and training innocent or police officers, as well as they're good at their job at keeping the peace as a police officer, which means they're the most skilled, most qualified, and most important person in that department, and probably in that area. If it's a county, the most important person in that county. If it's a city, the most person in that city. And if it's a state, obviously the most important person in that state, law enforcement.
Right, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but
I'm
the
just
Chiefs right now, the ones that are currently allocating the funding for all of the things that you had mentioned, don't know that much about de-escalation. And so, if we're talking about legislation that makes it mandatory for police to de escalate first, second, and third, and only in extreme cases take out their weapon and use it, then the chiefs are not the most knowledgeable about that situation because they don't do that right now. So, if we're talking about making legislation in order to change that, in order to make de escalation a priority, then you're going to need to look outside.
Didn't I already mention that many chiefs will agree that they need better de-escalation training, but in order
Yes,
to
but
do
they don't
that,
know
they
how
need
to
more
do it.
money.
But they don't know how to do it.
Right, so they would hire people who do.
Yeah, but but the point is that they need to be appointed by the state.
They are.
Well, they're not right now because it's
Oh,
not mandatory for
I'm
police. It's not mandatory for police to prioritize de-escalation.
Actually, I'm wrong. The sheriff is elected. The chief, I believe, is appointed. And the commissioner, I also believe, is appointed. I could be wrong on those last two, but I definitely know the sheriff is elected.
That's it. Yeah, that's a
in
side
in
point.
in in the United States, of course. It could be different over there for you guys. Um, but what were you saying again? The the chiefs, the appointed officials in police departments and commissioners, they aren't the most experienced. Is that what you're saying?
Specifically about de-escalation, yes.
Right. So wouldn't you suggest let them, people who already admit that they need better de-escalation training, wouldn't you say let them get more money to train better?
Get more money to train better, yes, but I don't think that they should be the ones that are designing the programs or that are sourcing the teachers.
That it
It
wouldn't be
needs it
just up to
needs it
them. It
needs to
would
be
be
it needs
whatever
to
they
be
decide.
independent.
That wouldn't be just up to them. They're not the chief of training, or what's the term? Um, ah, there's a special term for top training officer. It'll come to me one day. Again, I have a small.
It's fine.
Oh no, go ahead.
But look,
I'm probably not gonna remember it.
but look, the point here is that like it needs to be independent. It can't come from within the system because as I said in my rebuttal, the system is broken. The system is crumbling. It's got rust everywhere. So if
Can you
it if
explain how it's crumbling and how it's got quote rust everywhere?
Colin Colin George Floyd was allowed to be murdered on the street. That's how it's crumbling. A
Allowed? The
successful
killer was arrested.
Well, yes, but it wasn't stopped at the time.
Yeah, and I
And
I
if
will stand next to, as I said before, I will
but
stand next to anyone who hates those police officers and wants to get them arrested, which they
yeah,
have been.
but you asked me for an example, and the point is that a system that allows that to happen and that dissuades the junior officers from overriding a senior officer in that case, um, they are like that is the result of a broken system.
There are policies out there in the police department where officers have to stand up to senior officers who are breaking codes. The only issue is those officers didn't enforce it.
Yeah,
One
and do
was
you know what happens to the junior
excuse me, I was
officers?
talking. One was 4 days out of training. The other one was, I want to say, a couple months. And then the other one, uh, I think he was a couple years, but he was also helping the officer who actually murdered Floyd. So the other two officers were pretty inexperienced when it comes to this. They probably want the one that was 4 days out of training probably didn't even know that there was this code out there, and if he did, he probably felt very scared by the person who was kneeling on the neck of someone who disagreed with him.
I mean, like, that's almost.
And again,
Like,
I'm not trying to justify what
that's
they did.
almost a
Everything they
point
did is
again
bullshit.
against the standard of training that they're getting. If you're talking about somebody who left training 4 days ago, that information is kind of like the freshest in their head that it's going to be. So, like, if I
Right, but
leave
as
if
we've
I
discussed,
leave college, right, of a given Monday, everything that I learned on that day is going to be the freshest in my head on Monday evening, and it's only going to deteriorate from then. So the point is that if they're only 4 days out, that information is still relatively new to them. So if they didn't even know about this, and we're not even talking about like intervening in like a proper formal and official way. Fuck it, if they shoved him, like just pushed him off. If they pushed him off George Floyd, he would have at least got like a few gasps of air. Even if absolute worst case scenario, the junior officer was like, penalized, or like they were, taken away, and he went back to kneeling on his neck. Basically the point is that the chances of George's survival would have only went up. That's the point here.
mm-hmm. And as I've already agreed with you, yes, what they did was wrong. They are now in jail for it, and I absolutely agree that they should be in jail. How does
Yeah,
this
but
relate
getting back
to
to the
funding?
original point, the system that allowed for that to happen in the first place cannot be in charge of reforming it.
What? How
It
did the
needs to come
system?
from from outside. It needs to
How
be objective and independent.
how did the system force an officer to kneel on the neck of a person?
Because the system didn't say anything about not doing that. It doesn't
It does.
de-escalate. It always goes towards offensive first.
I just want to remind you guys we're talking about defunding the police.
Yeah, so taking away the resources from certain aspects of the police departments in order to benefit the wider community, in order to benefit them as a whole, like, I mean, to me just makes perfect sense. It's a broken, corrupt, rotten system, and if it needs outside influence to fix it, then that's just what it needs.
Mm-hmm. Um. Good God, I'm so sorry. I thought of a good response and now I just lost it. Um. Is there any chance you could repeat that? I'm so sorry. I got so much rushed through my
Broken,
head right now.
corrupted, rotten system that allowed for it in the first place, and it needs to be changed outside.
Okay, you reminded me. Thank you. So you want to take away from certain aspects, correct? That's the term you use?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. What in the police department is that certain aspect that is not important to keeping the public safe that police have?
The amount of I mean, like, resources as a whole, that could include like the amount of cars that they get every year, the amount of ammo, etc., the regular policing in predominantly black neighborhoods. They're like, there's a lot of things. These are just kind of off the top of my head.
Okay, so you want to take bullets away from people who protect the public. You want to take cars away from people who have mechanical failures that aren't their fault,
No,
and then you want
no,
to take police out of
no,
the communities of people who
no,
81% support the police officers. By the way,
no. That was such a straw man. It was unbelievable. That's not at all what I said.
then what did you say?
I I'll tell you what I didn't say. I didn't say take away resources. I didn't say take away cars. I didn't say take away everything else that you listed.
But you want to you. I asked you what.
I didn't say, had I have said take away cars from the police, what I would have said is they have to walk everywhere. or run or whatever. No, of course not. I'm saying that they don't need to have their cars upgraded every single year, even if you brought it back by like 2 to 3 years. Fuck it, 5 years. A 5-year-old car. What's wrong with a 5-year-old car? Basically nothing.
Okay, so
Even if you're talking about the cost of repairs to a 5-year-old car, it's still less than a brand new one. So you're still taking away the money, which is the point of what I'm talking about.
Okay, on cars, every single year, each car brand, each car dealer has a faster car that comes out, and every single year the officers upgrade, or every couple years, so often cops upgrade depending on the department and their budget. By the way, they upgrade those cars and they upgrade to faster, more sufficient cars that can keep up with the fastest cars on the street. They do this so that way, if there is a pursuit or something, they can keep up with those cars. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want someone outrunning the police who will stop at nothing and kill people to not get punished for something they did.
So you're saying that unless police officers don't have a brand new car every single year, people are going to be outrunning the police.
No,
Y'all
not
have
at all.
5 minutes.
Not at all. I'm
'Cause-
saying that police officers need to have the fastest possible car. That doesn't mean upgrade every single year. A Dodge Hellcat is still, 2019 Dodge Hellcat is still going to be faster than a 2007 Ford Fusion. Obviously, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the 2019 Dodge Hellcat is going to be faster, or is going to be slower than the 2020 Dodge Hellcat.
I mean, look, I don't know kind of like what part of the US that you're living in where every single criminal has a brand new car made in 2020 and therefore by definition is going to outrun the police, which by the way is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. They all have radios, they can all coordinate, they can all say I'm going down this road and then block them in. That's like outrunning the police is
they're on a highway-
extraordinarily rare, unless of course you've just spent the whole day playing GTA 5. The point is that just doesn't happen. So they don't need a brand new car every single year.
I'm not saying every single year, and never have I said that. I'm saying they just need the fastest. They need a car that's faster than the most.
Well, if you didn't
efficient.
say every single year, then what's the problem with them upgrading them every 5 years?
Because they need a car that's faster than every single new release car.
Right, so they need a new car, but they don't need a new car because the problem with the 5-year-old cars is that they're not as fast. Do you
You can
see how
upgrade-
circular your
You can
argument
upgrade
is?
the speed of vehicles. If you get a cool air intake on a 2019 Dodge Hellcat, that Dodge Hellcat.
Right,
is
but we're
gonna go a
not
lot
talking
faster.
about banning upgrades. We're talking about not giving them a brand new car every single year. You heard what I said about 2 minutes ago, where I said that repairs or upgrades is still cheaper than buying a brand new car, so that's
Yeah.
still feasible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would sit here and agree with you that not that every single year they do not need new cars. But what I'm saying is they need to upgrade those cars every so often so they can keep up with the fastest cars on the street. For example, if there's like I said, the Hellcat, that car is going to go a lot faster than a 2007 Dodge Charger that police have. So that car needs to be upgraded every 5 years. At 2014 Dodge Hellcat is going to be much faster than a 2005 Crown Vic. Much faster, even with the upgrades.
see,
So they need
like,
a new car.
dude, like this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand why you're talking about a 2007 because that's a 13-year-old car. I said every 5 years. I don't know why you're talking about like the brand new cars being able to outrun a car made in 2007. That's like
Okay,
I never said that. So you're literally straw manning me right now.
2015 Dodge Charger police.
Yeah,
Y'all have 1 minute.
Okay, so you've kind of backed off of that argument there completely.
Okay. Anyways, so I have a couple stats, and we only have 1 minute, so I just want to say a couple things. First off, thank you for not mentioning race. I'm just gonna bring it up though.
I did. I did mention race.
I said thank you for not bringing it up, but I'm going.
I did.
Going to, oh, you did.
Yeah.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, here's something for you. The Bureau of Justice and Statistics, my favorite people, they found them and the FBI both combined found 93% of all premature Black deaths in America were caused by Black-on-Black crime. 0.0004.
If you 1350 me, I swear
Excuse
to
me, I was
fucking
speaking.
Christ.
I was speaking. Thank you. 0.00046% of all police interactions result in a Black death. You're more likely to die in a plane crash and be struck by lightning combined. Basically, how do I say this? 46 hundredths of a 100,000ths of a percent. I think that's how you say it. Also, 4.1% of police interactions result in a Black being arrested. If you still don't believe me, out of the 53,468,324 total police interactions in 2015, they found that quote, police were equally as likely to initiate contact with Blacks and white. And if that still doesn't convince you, about 81% of Black Americans want the same amount of police or more police in their neighborhood. So the basic conclusion would be, if you are Black in America, the odds of you supporting police is 81%. The odds that the officer will be Black is 15%. The odds that you will be arrested is 44.1%, and the odds of you
10
dying
seconds.
will be 0.0046%.
You can go to the closings, Rena.
Alrighty. We're going to head to the 5-minute closings. And Rib, you go first.
Okay. So for the vast majority of this, I actually thought it was a very good debate, and I thought that it was productive in a lot of areas, right up until literally the last minute. You brought up one of the most complex and one of the most intricate and one of the most fleshed out and layers upon layers of stats and etc. that I would need at least 15 minutes to kind of properly go through and properly respond to. So that was that was genuinely one of the most dishonest things that I've ever seen happening. All we saw tonight, as far as I can see, is circular arguments, straw man arguments, not actually responding or rebutting a single thing that I was saying. I thought it was a good debate. I'm just annoyed now. So you can go over to you.
Alrighty. And Kirbside, ready when you are.
Thank you. So I thought it was a pretty good argument. Too. I'm glad I got to do this. I was so nervous at the beginning. I'm really sorry that I had to throw all this in at the last second. I lost track of time. We got too off topic talking about cars and things like that weren't really relating to the facts. But for the first half of the entire debate, every single time I made a rebuttal or an argument or something like that, Rib would stutter or say something, or have a few seconds before he says anything. We were mostly talking about the forms of police and what was the exact things. Find it. We were mostly talking about the department budgets and things like that, why we should defund them, and where the money would go. For the most of that time, he pretty much had no response to that whatsoever after the first few seconds. And even then, I would still come back with another one. He also, and up until, of course, the point where we started talking about cars, which really had no really relation to the topic. So yeah, I'm sorry that I threw those in at the last minute. I was really hoping we'd have some more time. Time just got away because we were talking about cars and how important it is or isn't to have a new car or a faster car that can chase someone if they're outrunning the police. Without regards to highways, by the way. Obviously, you'd need a car faster than someone on the highway. You can't just box them in. You can on the city street. So that's really all I had to say. Again, I'm sorry for throwing that in the last minute. I really wish we would have more time. Maybe we could do a part 2 or something like that soon. Until then, I'll yield my time if that matters anymore.
Alrighty. Thank you guys, and that concludes the formal part of the debate. Now, the Qbot is not actually working in this chat right now, so if you have a question, please react, thumbs up, whatever you want, on the message that I just posted in formal debate. And when your time's up, I'm going to unmute you and address you. So we do have a first reaction from Mox. And I'm gonna unmute you. Can you talk now? It doesn't seem like he can talk. How do I?
Who is it? Box?
Yeah, I unmuted him. There we go. Oh, he left. Hang on. Okay, I figured it out. Hey there, are you there?
Yeah, there you go. We can hear you.
Oh,
All right,
you can
see
hear
your
me?
question. Yep, just make sure you address whoever you want to answer your question, and if you want both of them, you have to address them both. Thank you.
Shoot. I forgot which one was against defunding the police.
That's KirbSide.
Oh, Kirbside. Where are you?
I'm right here.
Okay. To you, Kirbside. Well, basically, you're thinking that the police would have to take in all the responsibilities of, like, having to defend, like, to put down, like, to de-escalate a situation. Like, of course, both of you thought of police de-escalating the situation, but you were thinking that the police need more money to do it. Why couldn't, like, we move the work to social workers or people who are more knowledgeable in de-escalating situations and hearing people out, like therapists or social workers, rather than have it all placed on the police?
Are you concluded? I don't want to interrupt you.
And one more quick little thing. If we do defund, I'm not thinking of completely defunding, like cutting all funding, but lowering funding and putting it into other things that would help de-escalate, like people who more knowledgeable in de-escalating the situation rather than the police who are more knowledgeable in more defensive measures than actual de-escalation. Now I'm finished.
Okay. So I'll address the first point that you made first, which was police. Why shouldn't we have social do the therapeutic type things? Is that the correct question you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. So the reason we wouldn't want that is because a lot of the times, including mostly on traffic stops and domestic violence, um, those people are so aggressive that the police need weapons. And if you have someone that's sent in there without weapons, then it's not really going to do. They're not really going to do their job well. You'd have someone who is aggressive, who has no respect for people of law, and don't really care really what happens to anyone other than themselves. So it really wouldn't work. You can't just you have a therapy session on the side of the street. Um, the police would be a much better situation, as in case they do start getting more aggressive and start reaching for weapons and things like that, then the police are prepared already and they're already looking for that type of thing. You also asked why not put money in someone who has or someone who's better trained. Is that the other question you asked?
Well, to see who to put money in, like social workers or like people who are better trained in de-escalating situations.
Okay.
Like
Yeah. So
if we do defund it.
yeah. So it would pretty much be the same thing that I just mentioned before. You'd have people that are not prepared for life or death situations. And they're in a life or death situation, or could be in a life or death situation. Now, I'm not saying all domestic violence and all traffic stops are going to result in a death, but those are the highest risk for police officers. And the only reason the number's not higher is because they're armed and prepared. If we send a social worker in, it's just the number is just going to be higher. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Alrighty. And the next person that has a question is going to be, thank you for whoever muted. It's going to be Esther. You can probably talk.
You server muted me while I was trying to unmute myself, but it's okay. My question is for Rib. Just a short one. So the story that you told about the machete thing, where like it was
Mhm.
a guy with a machete and 4 police officers, and he still made it alive.
Yeah.
Was he harmed in any way? Like shot in the arm or like with a taser or anything like that?
No, he wasn't shot at all because they don't have guns.
Oh, okay. Do they have like
Um,
tasers?
I'm the police in Ireland definitely don't.
Okay.
England, I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm gonna say I'm about 75%
Mm-hmm.
sure that they don't. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I could be wrong about England, but I'm definitely not wrong about
Okay.
Ireland. But because this situation took place in England, there's a slight possibility that he was tased, but I don't think he was.
Okay. Um, I going on that, I wanted to know, like, do you know how much money the police in Ireland gets funded?
As an actual number, no, but I do
Mm-hmm.
know that it is. So you have the states in the US. We have counties in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
It's not funded county by county. It's funded as like a whole. So it depends on the size of the station, but um yeah, it goes to things that are kind of that are like we see as more needed. So as like de-escalation to proper tactics in order to kind of like corner somebody so that you don't escape the police.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff like that. Like there is like basically I know that Curbside kind of like went off and listed the chances of what's going to happen if you encounter a police. The chances that you are going to be shot by a cop in Ireland is 0%, and it has been that way for decades.
Okay. And do you know the crime rate in Ireland right now? Or as of like any
Uh,
within the decade or
I don't, but I'm sure it's only a quick Google away if you want to bear with me.
sure. I mean, you don't it doesn't really matter, but I did kind of have another question. Um,
Hmm.
is it have you taken into consideration in any way, because you did a lot of comparing between Ireland and America, so have you taken to consideration the size of the country and like the population of the countries and the homogeneousness of your country versus ours?
I may just be having a brain fart moment, but and I'm not even necessarily saying that I didn't, but when did I refer to like when did I compare and contrast directly between Ireland and the
No, no,
US?
no, no. I don't mean compare and contrast. I mean, you refer
Yeah.
to Ireland a lot, and that's perfectly fine because you live there. But I just
Okay.
wanted to know, like, what are your thoughts on, like, how you would bring things up like that versus, like, in America where things are, like, vastly different and, like, still wanting to defund the police? Because, like, the control is probably, like, really different versus how it is in America.
I'm sorry, could you just restate your question for just
So,
briefly? Sorry.
yeah, so have you taken into consideration the huge size of America
Mm.
and the
Yeah.
population difference and like the homogenous ness of like other countries compared that of America? Like
To be told,
into how like funding the police should go.
to be totally honest, the honest answer to that question is no. But to the best of my knowledge, the only kind of time that I would have referred back to Ireland is just to kind of talk about the fact that we prioritize uh that we don't you know offensively respond to a call out that we so like that would be the only sorry
You're fine. You're fine.
the only kind of so there was that and there was the other example of the chances of being shot by a that's 0%. But like that's something that I don't necessarily think that I would have to kind of compare and contrast about, because like we just don't
I
have guns,
wouldn't.
so that's just literally just not going to happen. I don't want to be guilty of dodging your question. I'm just not.
I wasn't
I'm just
trying
not
to
100%.
accuse you of
Yeah, no.
comparing and
It's just on the things that I did bring up about Ireland. I didn't necessarily feel as though I needed to take into consideration population, etc., etc. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
If that was an oversight on my part, then obviously that's just something that I'm guilty of, and
Mhm.
I'll obviously try not to do that next time. But yeah,
Okay. Thanks.
no problem.
All right, I might be a little robotic right now, I can probably tell. But the next person is going to be Joe and Tom. And it seems to be the last question. If not, y'all can react in the formal chat. And Tom, unmute.
Hello. Hey, so
There you
is it
go.
alright if I have
All
two
right.
questions for Rib, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So my first one would be, what would your like? I know you complained that you don't have enough time. You didn't have enough time to make a response to Curbside's statistics on, like, police killings compared to like police interactions. So, like,
Yeah.
do you have like a response like now? Like if like
I mean, it's like whether you're talking about the percentage of, like whether you're going to be arrested, etc., etc. The point is that it is disproportionately affecting Black people. So the studies that most right-leaning people cite when they are bringing up that type of thing is they bring it up as like an average, or as a whole, or as like a state by state thing, just for example. The point is that the studies that they tend to cite never take into consideration race, and that's the kind of point that we're talking about. So the point, yeah, I guess the kind of point is that it is, not only is it flawed, and if I had the time I would go into why it is flawed, but the kind of major point, and like is that it doesn't take into consideration race, and we know that Black
right,
people are disproportionately antagonized by the police.
how can we say it doesn't take into account race if it's looking at stats based on police interactions among the different races?
Because it doesn't take into, because it it uses it uses 1350 to like it's to their own disadvantage. They don't compare and contrast by population. So they'll say, oh, that like the level of deaths from African Americans if they encounter a police is this number, and if it is white people, it is this number. And oh my God, white people is so much higher. They're like, oh my God, no, but they don't talk about the population numbers though. That's the point. They don't put it into its full context. They limit the context and then pretend like they've achieved something, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. My second question would be, I think if I remember correctly, you said nobody is advocating for fully abolishing the police.
Yes. So okay. So I know that there are individuals, nobody serious, nobody who is like actually going to be affecting legislation. So okay, so in the hypothetical that this goes to Congress, right? There is nobody in Congress who is in favor of abolishing police. So the chances that if it made it to Congress that they were going to say, hey, there's no more police now, so you're on your own, I guess, that's never going to happen. So it's a scare tactic.
Well,
It's
I wouldn't say it's
literally
just
that. There's nothing else to it other than that. It is a scare tactic by saying that there's going to be no more police and you're on your own, and if a criminal breaks into your house, you're fucked.
I mean, 15, like a Gallup survey among 36,000 people over the age of 18 found that 15% of them would be like supportive of it. And
I don't care. Because they're not the people
Minnesota.
that are going to be actually enacting the legislation that is responsible for changing the police force.
What about
So,
Minneapolis City Council? They voted to. Most of them
I'm
voted to
sorry?
dismantle the city's police department. The Minneapolis City Council.
Yeah, but we're talking about a widespread country level. So it's not just state by state. We're talking about like proper legislation that is done on behalf of Congress and the Senate and then the president. That's the level that we're talking about. And unless you were to give
you can
me
abolish
unless
police on a state level.
unless you were to give me a stat that said that 13% of Congress members were in favor of abolishing police, then you would have a point. But there isn't any, so you don't. It's a scare tactic, dude. That's just all it is. I'm sorry. I don't mean
So
to kind of
you think
swat your
Minnesota
argument
City Council
aside.
officials are using a scare tactic?
If they're saying that there's going to be no more police, then yes. If they say that if you ring 911 and nobody answers or nobody ever shows up, then yes.
I mean, if you look at a place like the Seattle Autonomous Zone, like this literally did happen. Like people with those beliefs literally took over a area and had no police. People in that area, like if they called the police, cops would not be able to get to their house. Cops would not be able to help you.
Right. And how did that turn out for them? I wouldn't imagine very well.
Really bad, really bad.
Yeah. Okay. So there's your argument against abolishing the police, which is never something that I was in favor of anyway.
I think it shows that people do support that, and people. It's really not.
Okay.
I don't think
they're
labeling
idiots.
it
Is your
a scare
question
tactic.
answered, Joe?
They
I
got
don't think labeling it as a scare tactic is right
But
in
is
this
your
situation.
question answered?
But
Yeah,
I'll just take just an extra 30 seconds or so. It may not be right in your mind to call it a scare tactic, but it's accurate to call it so the point is that anywhere where this has happened, which you have just pointed to as somewhere where it has happened, it's ended up terribly. So
yeah.
we can take that as a learning experience as to why
But
we
that
should
doesn't
never
mean people
abolish
don't
the
want it to
police.
happen, right?
I'm sorry?
Just because it turned out badly doesn't mean that some people still don't want it to happen.
Then they're idiots. Fuck them. I don't care about them. If you're
Okay,
looking
well,
at
I
an
mean,
example
yeah,
where
they're
it
idiots.
turned out terribly and you still want it to happen, you're an idiot.
Alrighty,
Yeah.
so we still have another question to get through, so I'm gonna
I'm
have
so
to keep
sorry.
this short. Thank you for your time, Joe.
Yep.
And the next person
thanks
that's
for
gonna
answering.
talk is Raven.
Kirbside, guy goes for Kirbside. I came in a little late, so if you did answer during the debate, forgive me. I feel like you could have described your argument involving the car thing a little better, right? Surely not every person, not every drug dealer or criminal or robber around the street, is driving a perfect brand new Dodge Hellcat. Surely they're not all out there driving brand new sports cars. So I mean, come on, the argument that they need these upgrades for police cars every year to keep up with the brand new makes and models, surely it can't be that common that they're driving through the ghetto and see a pimp in some sparkled out brand new vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was just wondering if you could explain that argument a little bit better. Whatever reason there could be from that these upgrades so commonly.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. If I
No,
did. So yeah, I'm definitely not saying that every pursuit is going to be with a maxed out Dodge Hellcat, turbocharged. I'm not saying that. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because I would rather police out have the ability to chase someone if there were in that situation, rather than have the person who will stop at absolutely nothing get away from them, just to evade punishment. You know what I mean? Does that kind of clear it up a little bit?
I get that, but it just feels like I'm just wondering, are there any other examples you could give besides just being prepared for it? Because I mean, let's be honest here, it's not like every cop out there is, Bruce Wayne. They don't all need a tricked out supercar that could climb walls and everything. So I was wondering if there's any other argument you can give, like any other justification you give besides fast car.
Well, not really, actually. If there were statistically low fire rates in an area, you wouldn't say let's get rid of the fire department. They're not necessary since there aren't any fires. You would still need a fire department. So that kind of applies here, saying, of course, not every pursuit is going to be with a maxed out Charger, but it could happen, and you want to be prepared for that situation. I get what you're saying. Obviously, not every car or not every cop should be absolutely prepared for that situation, or not every department should have every single car prepared for that situation. That's why you see 2001 Crown Vics driving around in low budget cities. But again, you still need to be prepared just in case that happens. Because if let's say a Hellcat in 2014 in Houston, a Dodge Hellcat evaded police because they had their budget cut and they didn't have enough money to purchase the newer Chargers, or the newer, what was it, the Fusion, not the Fusions, the newer vehicles. They didn't have the money to do that, and that car got away even from the helicopter. So I'd rather the cops be prepared and not let that happen again, rather than it may happen, but it's not likely. You know what I mean?
All right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Alrighty. With no other questions, thank you guys all for coming, and thank you to both of the debaters. You guys did awesome. See you all next time.